Imagine a world where the moon whispers secrets and fates collide in the shadows of ancient forests. What if the one who rejected you was just a stepping stone to a destiny greater than you ever dreamed? Hold that thought, because by the end of this story, you'll see how rejection can lead to redemption and true love. Chapter 1. Two Orphaned Wolves. At just 23, Amelia Hart carried the weight of a lifetime on her delicate shoulders, with cascading raven-black waves that framed her face and ocean-blue eyes that held both fire and sorrow. She was a striking beauty, but she never cared to be seen. In the bustling moon-kissed city of Lunar Haven, where the supernatural elite walked with pride and power, where names held the weight of legacy and bloodlines were worshipped like ancient scripture, Amelia only wanted one thing: to remain invisible. Her only goal in a world overflowing with ambition and status was achingly simple: survive, save, and protect her younger brother. If you're feeling overwhelmed by responsibilities right now, remember that sometimes our greatest strength comes from protecting those we love most. She had no time for the courtship dances of high-ranking wolves, nor the whispering gossip of power-hungry she-wolves who fluttered through the corridors of luxury like peacocks. While they chased destiny and diamond, Amelia chased paychecks and prescriptions. By day, she worked tirelessly in the gleaming kitchens of Luxhaven, the most prestigious culinary haven in the city. There her hands became instruments of magic, slicing, dicing, searing, baking. Each dish a symphony of flavors, an expression of something deeper than hunger. She was a maestro of the kitchen, commanding the attention of even the most seasoned chefs, though she never sought their admiration. Her fame in the culinary world was growing, whispers of her dishes spreading beyond the hotel walls like smoke from a divine flame. Still, Amelia kept her head down, focused on the rhythm of the work. By night, she nursed her dreams in silence. Not dreams for herself, no, those had died a quiet death long ago. But dreams for her brother, her 13-year-old brother Finn Hart. Finn was her world, a bright-eyed boy with the same midnight black hair and piercing blue gaze. He was a mirror of Amelia in both beauty and spirit. He radiated joy even from his sterile hospital bed, surrounded by machines that hummed and beeped like a symphony of survival. Finn cracked jokes that made Amelia laugh through tears she thought she had buried. He held her hand when her strength faltered and made her believe in the impossible. He was mischievous, warm-hearted, and endlessly curious. Even in his illness, Finn remained a beacon of light, but that light had begun to flicker, dimming with each passing day. Diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease that crept through his body like a silent storm, Finn's once boundless energy was now rationed. His laughter came in shorter bursts. His steps were fewer, his naps longer. The disease was invisible to most, but devastating in its steady grip. His bones ached with a pain he never spoke of. His breath came in shallow, uneven gasps. On the worst days, he couldn't even lift his head without trembling. Still, he tried to protect Amelia from the heaviness that pressed against his chest. Tried to pretend he wasn't scared. He would flash his crooked grin and say, "I'm lucky, you know, most people don't have someone like you." But Amelia didn't feel lucky. She felt like she was drowning. Each month brought new bills that stacked like enemies at her door, new fears that whispered cruelly in the night. And worst of all, guilt. A relentless guilt that she couldn't save him fast enough. She worked like a machine, her body on autopilot, her soul held together by coffee and desperation. Her heart shattered every time she left Finn home alone, every time she missed a call from his doctor because she was in the middle of service plating desserts that looked like dreams while her own was slipping away. But it wasn't just about money. It was about time. Finn's condition was degenerative. The doctors were clear, mercilessly so. Without a complicated and expensive surgery, one that cost more than most wolves would see in a decade, Finn wouldn't make it to 18. Think about it if you've ever faced a ticking clock in your own life. Whether it's a health crisis or a deadline, this story shows that persistence can turn the tide, but only if you act before it's too late. Amelia had memorized his entire treatment plan like sacred scripture. She knew every side effect, every drug interaction, every possible complication. Her phone's alarm was a symphony of reminders, pills, hydration, nutrition injections. The refrigerator in their modest apartment was more of a medical storage unit than a kitchen lined with immune boosters, protein drinks, and vials that burned through her budget faster than she could cook. Amelia had become nurse, mother, protector, best friend. She was everything to him, and he never once complained. But when he was asleep, when his soft breathing filled the silence of their home, she would cry. She'd press her face into her pillow and beg the moon goddess for one miracle. Just one. Her cooking wasn't just talent. It was instinct. An art so profound that people often said there was magic in her hands. Some whispered it aloud that she had the touch of something divine, that her food healed more than hunger. And perhaps in some unexplainable way they were right. Her dishes silenced, critics lifted moods, even made rivals weep with emotion. She had drifted from kitchen to kitchen for years, her culinary gifts her only ticket to survival. She and Finn had lived like nomads, following opportunity, staying one step ahead of despair. From back alley diners to five-star restaurants, she cooked her way through hardship. Finally, she had landed a high-paying job as head chef at Lux Haven. It was a dream many would kill for. It was supposed to be salvation. But even that wasn't enough. Amelia didn't wear designer gowns or command respect from the city's elite. She wore aprons stained with saffron and rosemary. Her armor was the scent of garlic and thyme. Her strength was in her quiet endurance. While others chased mate's fortune or pack power, Amelia chased something far more precious: time. Just enough time to save Finn. Each morning she rose before the sun. She kissed Finn's forehead before slipping out the door, her heart aching as she left him behind. She moved through the city's shining towers and lavish homes with invisible feet, a ghost among gods. No one knew the battle she fought each day. No one saw the fire she smothered inside herself so she could light the way for her brother. But the moon goddess saw. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was listening. Because miracles come when the night is darkest. And Amelia's night was long, silent, and cold. And still she endured. A wolf without a pack. A sister without a choice. A heart breaking quietly with each passing day. But somewhere in Lunar Haven, another heartbeat just as lonely. Another orphaned wolf. Another soul lost in silence. And fate, as it often does, was about to stir. But what if this stirring fate brings not just love, but also danger that tests everything she holds dear? We'll uncover that soon. Welcome back to my channel. This is an audiobook for Rejected by My Mate, chosen by the Billionaire Alpha. A tale of werewolves, love, wealth, betrayal, and redemption set in a world where light and shadow collide. Narrated by Celery Brooks. If you're new here, my channel creates stories for adults and teenagers, with lessons and experiences to learn from. We post mainly on Saturdays. Our videos are in different genres and also in different forms. There are full-length audiobooks and short-chaptered audiobooks. Go to my channel page, subscribe, and check out the playlists for more fantasy, romance, thriller, mystery, suspense, and adventure. Prepare yourself for a breathtaking adventure filled with werewolves, forbidden magic, and a love that defies destiny. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Let the story continue. Chapter 2. The Rejection. Weeks ago, just as she thought things couldn't possibly get harder, Amelia's heart was shattered. Broken not by fate or illness, but by the one person she had believed would stand by her no matter what. The one person she had begun to imagine a life with. Her mate, Beta Damon Thorne. Damon had been her escape. He had made her laugh when the world was too heavy, made her believe, if only for a while, that she was more than a struggling orphan chef, that she could have a life filled with love, not just survival. He loved her, or at least he said he did. And she loved him back in the quiet, cautious way someone who's lost everything learns to love again. They'd sneak away on rare evenings, finding little sanctuaries in the city's quiet corners. They went on dates that felt like stolen fairy tales, whispered dreams of their future like teenagers wrapped in first love. They'd talk about the family they'd one day have, the life they'd build together, safe and whole. He'd first appeared in her world like a flame in the dark, showing up unexpectedly at Lux Haven, walking confidently through the lobby like he owned every inch of it. And perhaps he did. Damon Thorne, beta of the powerful Nightshade Pack, was everything Amelia wasn't. Noble blood, elite status, endless charm. With chestnut brown hair that fell effortlessly into place, and piercing green eyes that always seemed to be smiling or scheming. He was the kind of wolf the she-wolves of Lunar Haven fawned over. At first, his attention felt like a dream, unbelievable, impossible. He flirted with her over coffee orders, praised her cooking in front of the entire staff, and slowly, surely pulled her out of the shell she had built around herself. He chose her, or so she thought, a nameless girl from the lower districts, a chef with no last name worth remembering, a wolf with no pack. Their bond, though still subtle and hesitant, had the warmth of something fated, something meant. Amelia had always guarded her heart, always carried her past like a warning sign. But Damon made her want to believe in fairy tales again. She imagined a future, one where Finn was healed, where she wasn't alone anymore, where someone stood beside her, not out of obligation but love. But fairy tales don't survive in a world ruled by status. Everything changed the day she visited Damon's family home, a sprawling estate nestled among manicured hills dripping in old wealth and deeper expectations. She had dressed modestly, brought handmade pastries as a humble offering, and smiled as bravely as she could. But the moment she walked in, she knew the air turned cold. Eyes examined her not with curiosity but judgment. They saw her for what she was, a girl with no lineage, no pack, no prestige, an orphan clinging to a sickly brother scraping by on a chef's salary. In their eyes, she was not a mate. She was a stain, and they let her know it. The rejection wasn't subtle. It was sharp, calculated, and cruel. They called her unworthy, a disgrace, a burden to the name Thorne. And Damon, he didn't fight. He didn't defend her. He didn't even speak. He watched in silence as they sent her away like trash left on the doorstep. Amelia waited, hoped, prayed that he would come after her, say it was a mistake, that he loved her enough to fight. Days passed, then he asked to meet. They met at the edge of the city one evening, the place where they used to sneak away, where the stars had once been their witnesses. The air was thick with silence, the kind that suffocates before a storm. Damon stood tall, hands in his pockets, eyes colder than she had ever seen. "I'm sorry, Amelia," he said, voice clipped distant. "This whatever we had, it's not enough. You don't belong in my world. My pack would never accept you." The words tore through her like silver blades. She blinked, stunned her heart, refusing to believe what her ears had just heard. "But you're my mate," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. His eyes didn't soften. His posture didn't shift. "You're a good girl, Amelia. But you're not what I need or what's expected of me. And your brother Finn, he's a burden." That was the final blow. She didn't scream. She didn't fall apart. She didn't even let her tears fall until he was gone. Amelia simply turned and walked away. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. It felt like her soul had been ripped in two. But her pride burned brighter than her pain. She'd been rejected, cast aside like she meant nothing, deemed unworthy not just of love but of acceptance. But even in that moment, when her heart was shattered and bleeding, she thought of Finn. She couldn't afford to be broken. So she poured herself into her work, burying the pain under searing pans and endless shifts. She worked longer hours, pushed herself harder. Her dishes became sharper, bolder, laced with the pain she refused to speak aloud. She wore her heartbreak like invisible armor forged in fire and betrayal. But at night, when the world was quiet and Finn was asleep, she would remember the sound of Damon's voice, the finality in his words, the way he had looked at her, not with love but obligation, as if she were a duty he could no longer carry. She had given a piece of her heart to someone who measured her worth by status, someone who couldn't see her strength, her loyalty, her fire, someone who looked at her love and called it a burden. And still, through it all, she refused to regret walking away. Because even in the depth of rejection, Amelia had chosen her dignity. And that, she realized, was a kind of love too. The love she gave herself when no one else would. If you've ever been rejected in love or life, take this as a reminder that your worth isn't defined by others' acceptance, it's in how you rise and choose yourself every time. Chapter 3. The Billionaire Alpha's Return. When the elusive alpha Landon Voss finally returned to Lunar Haven, the entire city seemed to hold its breath. Whispers drifted through marble hallways and luxury salons, across gold-dusted ballroom floors and velvet-lined pack gatherings. His return was not just news. It was an event, a tidal wave of anticipation that washed over the elite like a fever dream, especially for the daughters of the city's wealthiest families and the high-ranking she-wolves of the most prestigious werewolf packs. Landon Voss was no ordinary alpha. At 27, he was a reclusive billionaire and heir to the powerful Shadowcrest Pack. Yet despite his wealth lineage and commanding aura, he had become more myth than man. His name inspired awe and mystery in equal parts. A ghostly figure who disappeared overseas years ago only to emerge now like a storm. A legend carved from silence, from the echoes of empty boardrooms and cold estates. With raven black hair that swept across his sharp jawline like ink, and eyes that smoldered the color of a storm-tossed sea. He was magnetic and merciless. The kind of man who didn't need to speak to be obeyed, the kind of alpha whose power crackled in the air like lightning. And now he was back. The prestigious families of Lunar Haven practically lined up their daughters like offerings, each more polished and pedigreed than the last. Every unmated she-wolf with a title, a bloodline, or a couture wardrobe suddenly found a reason to visit Shadowcrest territory. Some brought gifts. Others brought business proposals thinly veiled as courtship. All of them shared one dream: to catch the eye of the unmated alpha and become the Luna of the Shadowcrest Pack. But Landon Voss wasn't interested. He never had been. From the time he was a boy, Landon had grown up surrounded by opulence and expectation. He was raised in luxury, yes, but it was a cold kind of wealth, one that echoed with absence and abandonment. He had been orphaned young, left in the care of guardians more concerned with power than parenthood. From them, he learned control. From loss, he learned silence. He survived without attachments, built empires without partners, and learned to wield solitude like a sword. To him, love was a language he had never been taught. Mates were a myth, an ancient tale woven to soften the hardness of a world that had never been kind. The council of the Shadowcrest Pack, desperate for stability and a political edge, pressured him endlessly. Choose a Lunamary, produce an heir. They wrapped their expectations in business contracts and power plays, but Landon saw through the masks. None of them stirred him. Not a single one. Until that night, Landon had returned to his estate earlier that evening, a sprawling palatial mansion tucked deep within Shadowcrest territory, surrounded by high walls and dark woods. The staff, briefed to perfection, had cleaned and arranged every room to his taste. Then they vanished, slipping out quietly before he arrived. Landon didn't like company. He didn't want voices echoing through his halls. The house was silent, immaculate, and painfully empty. Just the way he liked it, or at least the way he'd convinced himself he did. But that night, the silence wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. The walls pressed in like ghosts of a past he couldn't bury. Restless Landon left the estate, stepping into his sleek black Bentley and driving through the forest roads beyond Lunar Haven. The sky was bathed in silver moonlight shadows, stretching like whispers across the path ahead. The world was still wrapped in a kind of ancient peace that only the wild could hold. And then it hit him. A scent, sweet, potent, addictive. It wrapped around him like silk and fire, a warm breath of vanilla kissed with something deeper, something that wasn't just pleasant. It was calling to him. No, not just calling, demanding. His wolf, dormant for years, stirred violently inside him. Eyes widened, muscles tensed, instinct snapped into place. Mate, his heart pounded, breath ragged. He slammed the brakes, pulling over onto the dirt shoulder of the road, his body humming with primal energy. He stepped out, cool night air biting at his skin, and scanned the trees. And then he saw her, a white wolf, beautiful, ethereal. She glided through the trees with the elegance of moonlight itself. Her fur shimmered under the celestial glow, glinting like snowfall kissed by stars. Every movement was grace, every step a silent hymn. Landon stood frozen, for a heartbeat breath caught in his throat, every instinct screaming that this was no ordinary wolf. This was her. Without hesitation, he shed his clothing and shifted. Where the she-wolf was moonlight, he was shadow, a massive beast of jet-black fur and electric blue eyes that glowed with an intensity born of command and hunger. He took off after her. He didn't chase, he joined her. They ran together. Two wolves moving as one, weaving through the trees like a story written in motion. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Something ancient passed between them. Recognition beyond language. It was as if the world itself had paused to witness their dance. Time ceased to exist. They reached a lake at the forest's edge, its surface rippling with the moon's reflection. The light caught the two of them, black and white, dark and light, mirrored perfectly in the still water. They stopped side by side as the silence wrapped around them like a spell. Landon stood still, watching her with a longing he had never felt in his life. His wolf urged him forward, aching to close the distance. He wanted to shift to see her, to speak, to ask her name, to offer his, to tell her mine. But before he could, she looked at him one last time. And then, with the elegance of a dream fading at dawn, she turned and vanished into the trees. Gone. Leaving only her scent behind, like a memory painted in gold. Landon stood at the edge of the lake, shifting back into his human form, his bare chest rising and falling as if he had run for miles. But this wasn't exhaustion. This was longing, real, raw, undeniable. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her face. But something inside him had changed. Something ancient had awakened. After a lifetime of silence, of solitude, of burying any hope that someone like him could ever be loved, he had found her, his mate. And now that he had, there was only one thing left to do. Find her. Because Landon Voss didn't chase dreams. He claimed them. And if you're searching for your own mate in life, whether literal or metaphorical, this reminds us that sometimes the connection is felt before it's seen, so keep your senses open. Chapter 4. Aching. Amelia stirred slowly in the small, worn bed of her modest apartment, tangled in thin sheets that did little to soothe the ache in her muscles. Her room was still wrapped in the silence of early morning, where the world seemed to hold its breath before the chaos of the day began. Her body was sore, not painfully, but in the way that spoke of a long run in wolf form, one that had stretched further and deeper than she'd gone in years, the kind of aching that felt like a memory echoing in bone and blood. The first rays of dawn slipped through the half-drawn curtains, brushing her pale skin with soft gold. Dust motes danced in the air like glittering spirits, and the soft hush of the wind whispered through a cracked window pane. Her raven-black hair spilled across her pillow in tangled waves, tousled and scented with vanilla pine and the wildness of the night air. She blinked up at the ceiling, heart still oddly racing, her mind trapped somewhere between waking and the memory of moonlit trees. Something about last night felt different, sacred, almost like the woods themselves had breathed with her, moved with her, like the run had not just been an escape, but a calling. She sat up slowly, breathing in the quiet. The apartment was small, but it was home. Finn was still asleep in the next room, his tiny frame curled beneath a quilted blanket hooked up to his medication machine. The steady hum of the machine filled the silence, a dull, mechanical lullaby, and a painful reminder of the countdown ticking inside her heart. Every shift, every moonlit run was a stolen moment, a fragile breath away from reality, from the truth she carried like a weight against her ribs. But last night Amelia wrapped her arms around herself, drawing her knees up to her chest as her mind flashed back to the forest, to the way the wind had whispered through the trees, carrying away the heaviness in her soul. She had needed to escape. Damon's rejection still echoed in the back of her mind like an old scar trying to bleed again. The pressures of her job, the relentless bills, Finn's worsening condition, everything had pushed her to the edge, to the brink. So she ran. And that was when he appeared, a black wolf, large, powerful, unlike any she had ever seen before. There had been something primal in the way he moved, yet something graceful, something hauntingly beautiful. His scent had overwhelmed her, strong, earthy, something dark and addictive, laced with a warmth that reached into her chest and pulled at something sacred. It had clung to her even now, lingering on her skin like a secret. They hadn't spoken. They hadn't touched, but they had connected. For a few fleeting moments, it was like the rest of the world had disappeared. Just the two of them under the moonlight, breathing the same air, hearts beating in tandem as though drawn by something ancient and unspoken. Their wolves had danced like shadows between the trees, wild and free, two halves of a whole that had never met, yet somehow always known. Amelia exhaled slowly and pressed her hand to her chest where something still fluttered. Nervous, excited, afraid. That run had stirred something she hadn't felt in a long time. Something more dangerous than love. Hope? Who was he? She whispered aloud, her voice small in the silence. But she shook the thought away like a daydream. It didn't matter. She couldn't afford to get lost in fairy tales. Not with Finn's life hanging in the balance. Whoever he was, if he had recognized her scent, he would have come after her. He would have found her by now. But he hadn't. He'd stayed in the woods. Or maybe, like everyone else, he'd sensed what she was. An orphan without a pack, without title or lineage. Just a chef. Just another nameless she-wolf trying to survive in a world that only valued pedigree and power. She brushed the thought away and swung her legs over the side of the bed, rising into the morning routine that had become her rhythm. She tied her hair back, washed her face, and pulled on the familiar comfort of her apron. The kitchen beckoned her like an old friend. The aroma of coffee and herbs soon filled the air as she began prepping breakfast for Finn. Her hands moved with practiced grace, measuring, whisking, searing, because cooking was her sanctuary, her magic. It was the one place in her life where she still had control, where her heart could express what words never could. She poured love into every dish, every chopped herb, every sizzle of the pan. It was her language. But no matter how hard she tried to focus, she couldn't stop thinking about the black wolf with the ocean blue eyes. The way he had run beside her like he'd known her soul. And in relationships today, if you've ever felt an unexplained connection with someone, this chapter teaches us to trust our instincts because sometimes fate speaks through feelings, not words. Chapter 5. The Culinary Art. That morning, Shadowcrest Tower Alpha, Landon's office. The towering glass windows of Shadowcrest Tower overlooked the sprawling city of Lunar Haven. Morning light filtered in cool and golden, casting sharp shadows over the pristine interior of Alpha Landon Voss's office. The room was a reflection of its owner, structured elegant with an underlying tension that hinted at the storm within. He sat behind a dark oak desk, his fingers drumming idly against a thick file labeled Shadowcrest Investments Fiscal Q2. Mind wasn't on the numbers, though. It hadn't been since last night. He hadn't slept. Not properly, anyway. That white wolf haunted his thoughts. The scent of vanilla and moonlight still lingered in his senses like a ghost that refused to leave. Her presence had stirred something ancient in him, something primal, buried deep within the marrow of his bones, something his wolf refused to let go of. He leaned back in the leather chair, the tension in his shoulders taut as wires. The silence of the office stretched, broken only by the distant hum of the city below. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless searching. He pushed the file away just as his personal assistant knocked softly on the frosted glass door. Alpha Landon, your schedule is clear today except for one item: tonight's culinary competition. The city councilman extended an invitation again, said it would mean a lot if you'd attend as the guest of honor. Landon frowned slightly. He wasn't in the mood for cameras or social events. Not tonight. Not with her scent still clawing at the back of his mind like a song he couldn't forget. Tell them I'm busy, he muttered. Work. But before she could respond, his phone buzzed on the desk. An incoming call from Elder Voss, one of the oldest and most persistent elders of Shadowcrest. Landon hesitated for half a breath, then answered. Landon, the elder's voice rasped, steeped in years and wisdom. Surely you're not still hiding behind that desk. You can't avoid choosing a Luna forever. Come out tonight, mingle. You might be surprised who fate places in your path. Landon's jaw tightened. The council was always watching, always nudging. I'll go, he said, at last, his voice flat but decisive. The call ended, and within the hour, Landon was preparing for the event. His tuxedo custom-tailored Armani fit like a second skin, accentuating the quiet strength in his frame. His feet were clad in sharp Christian Louboutin shoes, and around his wrist gleamed a rare Patek Philippe Henry Graves super complication. Everything about him was a declaration of control, elegance, and untouchable wealth. His raven hair was swept back with effortless precision, his cold blue eyes unreadable. He was the perfect alpha, disciplined, untouchable, lethal. When he stepped into his matte black Bentley, the media were already abuzz. Camera flashes greeted him like lightning, questions thrown like darts into the night air. By evening, the culinary competition venue glittered like a ballroom under moonlight. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars, casting a celestial glow over the red carpet. Reporters in heels chased flashes and whispers. Every eye turned toward the tall, commanding figure stepping out of the shadows. Alpha Landon, in black, tall, commanding, mysterious, and single, but he barely noticed them. He was scanning the crowd for something else, for someone else. His senses were sharp, alert, tuned to the memory of a scent he had inhaled in the woods. His wolf was prowling beneath his skin, ears pinned forward, alert high. Meanwhile, Amelia's apartment. Amelia adjusted the neckline of her simple chef's coat, smoothing the wrinkles with trembling hands. Her raven hair was pulled into a sleek braid that fell down her back like a silk ribbon. Her piercing blue eyes, though tired, burned with quiet determination. Finn sat on the small sofa behind her, grinning despite the tubes and wires around his chest. His cheeks were pale, but his spirit was bright. "Are you nervous?" he asked, swinging his feet gently, his voice a whisper of curiosity. Amelia smiled and crouched before him, tucking a strand of hair behind his ear, fingers gentle. "A little, but I'm more focused than afraid. Because of me. Because of us," she corrected, voice firm. "If I win, you get your surgery. No more pain. No more fear." Finn's eyes shimmered with belief. "You're the best chef in the world, Ami. You've always been magic." She kissed his forehead, her lips lingering like a promise. "Then let's go show them what magic tastes like." Nightfall, the culinary competition Lunar Haven Arena. Amelia arrived backstage with Finn in tow. The venue was grander than she had imagined. High ceilings adorned with golden arches, velvet drapes, framing tall windows, and elegant judges' tables polished to perfection. Photographers moved like shadows, and the hum of expectation buzzed in the air. Finn sat in the VIP section, legs tucked beneath him, a proud smile glued to his face as Amelia stepped into the warm glow of the competition kitchen. 7 chefs were already prepping their knives, gleamed spices stacked in symmetrical rows. The prize money was announced again, $500,000. Enough to pay for Finn's surgery. Enough to finally breathe. Enough to change everything. Amelia clutched her silver knife, the only thing her mother had left her before the fire. Her palms were sweaty, but her heart had found its rhythm, beating strong and steady. She didn't know that high above in the VIP balcony, dressed in black, and watching like a wolf in the shadows, Alpha, Landon Voss had just spotted her. His breath caught that scent. Vanilla and moonlight. It was her. His wolf growled softly, low and possessive, and the air around him seemed to thicken. And this time, he wouldn't let her run. But what if winning this competition brings more than money? It brings a destiny you never saw coming. Hold on, we'll see. Chapter 6. The Sacrifice. Lunar Haven Culinary Arena. Competition night. The heat of the kitchen didn't faze Amelia Hart. Not tonight. Her hands moved with precise grace as she sliced, stirred, and plated. Each motion as fluid as breath, despite the bright lights, the roaring crowd, and the pressure of a grand prize hanging in the balance. She was calm, focused. Her blue eyes narrowed with purpose. Each breath matched the rhythm of her movements. She worked like a symphony in motion, a dance of culinary passion honed by necessity and love. But amidst the calm, something, or rather someone, disturbed the air around her. She could feel it, the weight of a gaze from above, piercing, intense, predatory. It prickled along the back of her neck. Yet instead of unsettling her, it made her sharper, more alert. A strange energy coursed through her blood, like a rising tide, awakening a part of her she thought she'd buried after Damon's rejection. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. Somewhere out there in the VIP balcony, he was watching. VIP balcony. Alpha Landon in black. Landon sat stone still in his velvet-lined seat, his wolf thrumming with anticipation. The moment Amelia's name was announced, a jolt ran through him like a live wire. She's the wolf. He knew it in his bones the moment the scent of vanilla hit his senses again, like moonlight, and memory like destiny. The ache that had haunted his dreams for weeks now made sense. She wasn't just anyone, she was his mate. He watched her as she moved, eyes hungry but controlled. Everything about her, her grace, her strength, her fire, pulled at him in a way he couldn't explain. It was not just attraction. It was recognition, a soul-level knowing. The appetizer round began. Plates were whisked away, served to the special guests and judges. Landon's dish was a delicate wild mushroom tart, infused with truffle and herbs. The moment it touched his tongue, something shifted. The flavors danced like secrets being told, emotions long buried, blooming anew. He closed his eyes. This wasn't just food. It was emotion, memory, magic. He set his fork down slowly, fighting the urge to react outwardly, though his wolf howled in silence. "Who is this?" he asked, his voice low, barely above a growl. Amelia Hart, his assistant, whispered beside him, his heart clenched. Of course. 3 chefs were eliminated. Amelia advanced. Main course round. This time, Landon didn't even pretend to look elsewhere. His gaze was fixed like a hunter's, unrelenting. He watched as Amelia plated her main dish, a pan-seared venison loin glazed in blackberry wine reduction served with roasted root vegetables and garlic herb mash. The sight alone made his mouth water, but it was the care in her every motion that captivated him. She tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, her face tight with concentration. She didn't glance at the balcony, didn't hesitate, but he could feel it. She knew. The moment he took his first bite, his soul stirred. It was like warmth after winter. The home he never had. Like her. Landon leaned back slowly, savoring the last forkful, his decision clear. "I vote for her," he said firmly, casting his vote before the judges even debated. She moved on. Only 2 chefs remained now. But then, just as Amelia was about to begin her dessert, she heard the frantic commotion in the VIP section. Someone had shouted her name, their voice sharp with panic. "Amelia, your brother, he fainted." Her knife clattered to the floor. Finn, she ran through the crowd, through the gasps and whispers, her breath caught in her chest, her heart pounded in terror. She found Finn slumped in his seat, pale and limp, eyes closed. He looked like a broken doll, his small chest rising too slowly. "No, no, no, Finn," she cried, cradling his face with trembling hands. Paramedics rushed in. The judges called out to her. The cameras flashed, but Amelia didn't hesitate. She climbed into the ambulance with him, holding his hand all the way, tears silently streaking down her cheeks. She didn't look back. Not even when they called her name on the stage. Not even when they announced the final round had begun. Later that night, Landon's private suite. Landon stood by the window, overlooking the emptying arena. The crowd had gone, the lights dimmed, and yet inside him a storm brewed. A fury and ache he hadn't felt in centuries. "She would have won," he said quietly, his voice heavy with conviction. "Yes, Alpha," his assistant replied, standing by the door. "But her brother, the boy, has a critical autoimmune disease. No parents. She works at the 5-star Lux Haven. She's been saving everything for his surgery." Landon's jaw clenched his chest, tightening with something far more dangerous than guilt. It was protectiveness. It was possession. She had sacrificed everything, and now she had nothing except him. Landon turned to the window once more, his voice low but certain, burning with purpose. "Find out which hospital he was taken to." His wolf growled within him, eager, restless, ready. He would not let his mate suffer alone. Not anymore. And in everyday life, if you've ever sacrificed something big for family, this moment highlights how such acts of love can attract unexpected help. So don't lose hope. Your miracle might be closer than you think. Chapter 7. Anonymous. 2 days later. Lunar Haven General Hospital. The sterile smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the air, mingling with the steady hum of machines and quiet murmurs from the hallway beyond. Amelia sat unmoving by Finn's bedside, her fingers laced tightly around his pale, fragile hand. The rhythmic beeping of the monitors grounded her in a reality she wished she could escape, one where the boy she loved most in the world lay unconscious, suspended in a stillness that terrified her. He looked so small beneath the stark white sheets. So still, too still. She hadn't eaten since the night of the competition, hadn't slept. Every waking moment since had been spent in that uncomfortable chair by Finn's side. Her world had narrowed to the quiet rise and fall of his chest and the blinking pulse of machines. The memory of his collapse haunted her. The way his body had gone, limp, the panic in the arena, the helplessness that had overtaken her as she held him and cried out for help, the competition, the prize money. She'd been so close and then gone. She'd thrown it all away for Finn, her world, her everything. And if she had to make that choice again, she would 1,000 times over. There was no prize greater than her brother's life. "He's all I have." The quiet creak of the door drew her attention. A nurse stepped inside her presence, gentle, her eyes warm with understanding. She held a folder in her hands and approached slowly as though not to disturb the fragile peace of the room. "Miss Hart," the nurse said kindly, her voice a soft murmur. Amelia stood with effort, her muscles aching from days of tension and stillness. "Yes, I just wanted to let you know." The nurse glanced down at the file in her hands before looking back up, her smile genuine. "Finn's surgery has been fully approved. All expenses have been covered, including medications and post-operative care." Amelia blinked, disoriented, her breath caught in her throat. I think you have the wrong room," she said weakly. The nurse gently shook her head. "No mistake. A private donor paid the full amount early this morning. They've asked to remain anonymous." Amelia's knees buckled slightly. She lowered herself back into the chair, stunned. Paid all of it. Her heart thundered in her chest, her mind racing to understand. She gripped Finn's hand tighter, as though grounding herself in his warmth. Tears welled in her eyes. Relief and disbelief swirled within her, overwhelming and unfamiliar. "But who would do something like that?" she whispered, voice cracking. The nurse offered a gentle shrug. "Whoever they are, they must really care." Amelia looked down at Finn. He stirred slightly, a soft sound escaping his lips as a faint flush of color returned to his cheeks. Her heart clenched. Someone saved him. A miracle. A miracle she hadn't even dared to pray for. Because miracles didn't happen for girls like her. Girls who worked double shifts to barely get by, girls who lived for the next paycheck and carried the weight of the world on their shoulders. And yet here it was. She turned her face away, the tears falling freely now. Tears of gratitude, tears of exhaustion, tears of hope she hadn't felt in years. Somewhere out there, someone had changed everything and she had no idea who. Meanwhile, Shadowcrest Estate. Landon stood on the balcony of his vast mansion, the moon casting silver shadows over the hills of Lunar Haven. The land was quiet, peaceful, as if holding its breath. In his hand was a glass of whiskey, untouched, forgotten. He didn't need to drink to feel the fire that burned in his chest. He had done what he needed to do. He didn't do it for thanks. Didn't need recognition. In truth, he hoped she never found out. All he wanted was for her to be safe. Her and the boy. His wolf stirred inside him, restless but content. It had been quiet since the moment the donation cleared, as though satisfied that the mate it had longed for was no longer in danger. Soon he thought, his eyes fixed on the horizon. She'll know it was me. But not yet, not until the time is right. Until then, he would watch from the shadows, protect from afar. Because love wasn't always loud. Sometimes it moved silently, invisibly, like the moonlight slipping across the earth. And Landon Voss would wait for her, for Finn, for fate to deliver the moment they were meant to collide again. He would wait because for the first time in a long time he had something worth waiting for. Consider this in your own life. Anonymous acts of kindness can change someone's world, so if you have the means, try helping someone in secret and watch how it transforms you too. Chapter 8. The door reopens. Finn was home, recovering, breathing easier. The color had returned to his cheeks, and for the first time in weeks, Amelia allowed herself a single, fragile breath of relief. The surgery had been a success. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, and though Finn was still weak, there was light in his eyes again, hope, mischief, and life. But just as Amelia helped him into bed, tucking the blankets around his legs, the phone rang. She answered, still smiling softly. "We're sorry, Miss Hart. Your employment has been terminated. Effective immediately." The voice on the other end was clipped. Impersonal, corporate. Why, she asked, her voice sharp with panic as she tightened her grip on the phone. "We're unable to provide details at this time. Your severance will be processed within 7 business days." And just like that, the call ended. Amelia stood frozen. Then her knees gave way and she dropped to the floor beside Finn's bed. Her hands shook, her vision blurred. No job, no income, no security. Finn needed aftercare medications, nutritious meals. The bills were piling up again, looming hungry shadows that threatened to swallow her whole. She bit her lip to keep from sobbing. The world had crumbled once more. But fate wasn't done yet. Barely an hour later, another call came. This one from a quiet, almost serene voice. "Miss Hart." "Yes," she said, cautiously, wiping the remnants of her tears from her cheeks. "This is an assistant from Shadowcrest Industries. You've been selected for an interview for the position of personal chef to the chairman." Amelia blinked, certain she'd misheard. I didn't apply for that." "You've been chosen," the voice said gently. "Please arrive at Shadowcrest Tower tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Sharp chosen. Shock settled over her like a heavy shawl. Shadowcrest Industries, the most powerful conglomerate in Lunar Haven. She didn't know what was more unbelievable, the sudden termination from Luxhaven, or the fact that she was now summoned by the Alpha himself, Landon Voss. Still, she had no other choice. The next morning, she chose her best outfit, a crisp blue blouse that complemented her eyes-tailored black slacks and a pair of low heels. Her nerves tangled inside her like knots as she kissed Finn's forehead and left him in the care of their trusted neighbors. The towering glass building of Shadowcrest Industries gleamed in the early sun like a cathedral of power. Amelia hesitated at the entrance, feeling like an imposter among giants. She stepped inside. Marble floors, gold accents, chandeliers that dripped light like diamond rain. The atmosphere buzzed with importance. Men and women moved like clockwork, their faces set their purpose unshaken. She followed a guide to the upper floor where the interview took place. It was brief, professional, efficient. They already knew her credentials, her story, her past, her signature dishes. Within 20 minutes, the decision was made. "You're hired," the interviewer said, sliding a folder across the table. "Welcome to Shadowcrest." She stepped out of the room in a daze, the folder heavy in her hands. It read, "Confidential employee contract." And then, without warning, Landon caught her scent. He was in a board meeting, eyes glazed over with disinterest until it hit him. Vanilla wildflowers. A breath of warmth in the sterile air, his wolf surged. Hours it howled. "She's here." Landon stood up mid-discussion and left without a word, ignoring the startled murmurs from his executives. He followed the trail like a hunter, weaving through corridors, until he turned a corner and saw her, Amelia. She was walking toward the elevator, her back to him, her stride graceful, unaware. Her raven hair caught the light like silk. She looked stronger, fiercer. Landon's heart pounded. His wolf clawed to be let out to speak, to touch. But he stopped himself. Not yet. He wasn't ready. She wasn't ready. The strings he had pulled to get her here were delicate, invisible. She couldn't know, not yet, that he was behind the job offer and her firing. So he watched her walk away again, disappearing into the lift, unaware of the storm that churned just down the hall. Later that night, whispers spread across Lunar Haven. The orphaned chef from the culinary competition, hired by Alpha Landon Voss. Social media buzzed, gossip circles ignited. The she-wolves of high society fumed. How could he choose her? A nobody. A commoner. Daughters of the elite, raised in silk and silver, had fought for the position for years. And now a girl from the streets, a girl with no pack, had been chosen. The next day, as Amelia left the Shadowcrest building, the fury found her. 3 she-wolves blocked her path. Daughters of the elite, faces cold, lips curled in cruel amusement. "You must think you're special." One of them sneered, arms crossed. "But you're nothing. Don't think you'll last long in that tower. You'll never be his Luna," another spat. "Stay in your place, little chef." Amelia's chest tightened, her heart pounded, but she held her head high, brushing past them without a word. Their venom didn't touch her. But later, alone in the quiet of her apartment, she sat by Finn's side, the words echoing in her mind. Why me? Why did Landon Voss choose her? What game was fate playing? And behind all of it, behind the silent strings being pulled and the quiet miracles, one truth shimmered just out of reach. She was no longer invisible. The door had reopened, and nothing would ever be the same again. In your career, if you've ever faced jealousy from others after a big break, remember it's often a sign you're on the right path, so keep pushing forward. Chapter 9. Into the Alpha's Den. The night was cold, wind curling like a whisper through the cracks of Amelia's aging apartment windows. She sat quietly beside Finn's bed, his chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. As he slept, the room was dimly lit by a single lamp in the corner, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor. Amelia brushed her fingers gently through his raven black hair, humming softly in the hope of keeping his dreams sweet. Finn had been recovering well since the surgery, but he was still fragile. Every breath he took was a silent prayer answered. Every smile he gave her, weak but genuine, made her heart ache with love and responsibility. She hadn't allowed herself rest. Not really. Her mind was always buzzing with questions, fears, plans. She barely noticed the sound at first. A creak, a faint shuffle, then silence. She froze. Her spine straightened. Eyes narrowed. The lull of the evening was too perfect. Her instincts screamed. Something was wrong. She rose from the edge of Finn's bed, careful not to wake him. Her bare feet moved noiselessly across the floor, heart thumping louder with each step. Just as she passed into the narrow hallway connecting the living space to the bedroom's crash, the front door exploded inward, ripped off its hinges, splinters raining down like wooden confetti. Amelia gasped and stumbled backward as 3 shadowy figures burst into the apartment, their forms dark and hunched, dressed in black from head to toe. "Finn!" she screamed, running to shield the bedroom with her body. The men didn't speak at first. They moved like jackals, slow and mocking. She darted to the kitchen, snatched a knife from the drawer with trembling fingers and pointed it forward. "Stay away from us," she shouted, her voice breaking. Her hands shook, but her grip tightened. Her gaze didn't waver. They laughed. "You think you belong in Shadowcrest Tower now, huh?" One of them sneered, stepping forward with a predator's grin. "Maybe the Alpha will want you even more if we break that pretty face." Her blood ran cold. Fear wrapped around her like iron chains. She couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. Then a blur of black crashed through the doorway. One attacker was thrown against the wall with a bone-cracking slam. Another flew backward, crashing into the dining table. The third was swept off his feet with a brutal, sweeping kick. Landon's guards, clad in Shadowcrest combat gear. Their movements were precise, rehearsed, lethal. In mere seconds, the apartment was filled with groans and silence. The attacker's unconscious limbs twisted, mouths bloodied. Amelia dropped the knife, her knees wobbling beneath her. One of the guards turned to her and bowed low. "Miss Hart Alpha Voss has given strict orders for your protection." She nodded slowly, breath catching. Her heart pounded in her throat. Her gaze moved to Finn's bedroom where he still lay sleeping, unaware of the nightmare that had just tried to invade their world. An hour later, Landon's phone buzzed in the middle of a board meeting. He ignored the talking heads around the table and looked down. Attempted attack. Miss Hart and her brother unharmed. Situation under control. Orders. His hand clenched around the phone. His wolf snarled inside him, rage unfurling like wildfire. His chest burned. No more delays. He stood abruptly, chair crashing behind him. He strode out of the room, ignoring the startled voices. As soon as he was alone, he picked up the phone. "Move her tonight. Bring her and the boy to the estate." That same night, Amelia sat stiffly on the edge of Finn's bed. Her hands trembled as she ran a cloth over his forehead. Her body hadn't stopped shaking since the attack, even though her mind screamed at her to stay calm. The guard from earlier returned this time with a softer tone. "Miss Hart," he said respectfully, "you're not safe here." She looked up, eyes wide. "What do you mean?" "The Alpha has ordered your relocation. You and your brother will be transferred to Shadowcrest Estate effective immediately." She blinked. The words didn't register at first. "Well, what?" "You'll be safe there. No one crosses the estate's boundary without permission." She hesitated, torn between fear and awe. Shadowcrest Estate, the fortress of power that overlooked the city like a throne. No one entered unless summoned. No one challenged its security, but Finn will handle everything. Moments later, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside. More guards arrived, lifting Finn gently with reverence, placing him in the vehicle with the care of someone precious. Amelia followed, dazed. As the city lights fell away behind them, the road curved up the mountain. The forest thickened, the moon was high and up ahead. Shadowcrest Estate loomed like something out of a dream. Gates of wrought iron, taller than trees, swung open silently. And if danger has ever knocked on your door in real life, this shows that having strong allies can make all the difference, so build your network before you need it. Chapter 10. The Mansion of Secrets. The ride through Lunar Haven's winding, shadowed streets was long, silent, and strangely calm, at least on the surface. Inside the sleek black SUV, Amelia sat with Finn's head gently resting on her lap, her arms protectively around his frail body. Her heart was hammering with a strange cocktail of nerves, awe, and disbelief. Everything had happened so fast. One moment, masked attackers had shattered her fragile peace, and the next, Shadowcrest guards had swooped in like avenging spirits. Now she was being driven toward the heart of the Alpha's empire. The iron gates of Shadowcrest Estate groaned open, revealing a private world few had ever seen. Her breath caught. It looked like something out of a fairy tale. A Gothic palace, carved from obsidian black stone, kissed by the glow of moonlight. Ivy crept like silver veins along the massive walls. Towers rose high above the cliffs, casting shadows that seemed to reach for the stars themselves. A stone-paved driveway stretched out like a ceremonial carpet flanked by a fleet of exotic cars. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bugattis, Rolls-Royces, BMWs, Bentleys, machines of speed and luxury, all bearing the emblem of a shadow in flight. Her pulse skipped. Alpha Landon Voss, the name, still sent a shiver down her spine. Billionaire legend living in royalty, and somehow connected to her fate in ways she didn't yet understand. The SUV rolled to a stop at the grand entrance. The mansion doors swung open before they even reached the steps. They were expected. Inside, cool air kissed her cheeks as she stepped into a cavernous foyer illuminated by golden chandeliers and moonlight pouring through stained glass. Polished obsidian floors reflected the glow like pools of ink. Paintings adorned the walls, ancient, regal, and silent. Amelia stared, overwhelmed by the opulence. A soft, composed voice greeted her. Welcome to Shadowcrest Estate, Miss Hart." She turned to see an older gentleman approaching, tall and elegant with salt and pepper hair swept back and eyes that held a quiet, knowing kindness. He wore a tailored designer suit and moved with the fluidity of someone used to power. "I'm Elias, the house butler. If you need anything day or night, I'll see to it." "Thank you," Amelia replied, her voice barely a whisper. Elias offered a nod and gestured for her to follow. She trailed behind him as he led her through the estate, speaking softly of its history and design. He showed her the music room with its grand piano and string quartet corner, the gilded dining hall with its crystal candelabras, and a vast library that smelled of parchment and ancient magic. She paused at the portraits in one of the long hall's oil paintings of regal men and women, all with the same piercing eyes. "Are these?" she asked. Elias's expression softened but turned unreadable. "The Shadowcrest lineage. The family is no longer present. It's not my place to speak of them." Amelia didn't push further. In the outer gardens, moonlight spilled across rows of fresh herbs and vegetables. The air was fragrant alive. Her fingers brushed over rosemary, thyme, basil. For a fleeting moment she forgot the danger, forgot the weight on her shoulders. This was where she belonged. Eventually, Elias brought her to a quiet annex nestled on the edge of the estate gardens. "This will be your quarters," he said gently, private, secure, and equipped, for you and your brother's comfort. The Alpha thought it best you had your own space, while still under the estate's protection. Inside, Amelia found herself breathless. The space was warm and elegant, with modern furnishings woven seamlessly into timeless architecture. 2 bedrooms, a cozy living area, a small kitchen nook. It felt like home. Finn, now awake and groggy, blinked as he stepped into his room. His gasp made Amelia turn. "It's everything I ever wanted," he whispered, his voice thick with wonder. Comic books lined one wall. A high-end gaming console sat beneath a large screen. A telescope stood by the window, angled at the stars. Tears filled Amelia's eyes. Joy, relief, gratitude. Seeing Finn's happiness was her greatest gift. Elias stood at the door, his expression proud. Alpha Landon personally gave instructions for everything. Why, she wondered again. Why was he doing this? Still overwhelmed, Elias led her through a corridor that joined the annex to the main house. It brought her to the estate's true heart, the kitchen. Here she met Mr. Hale, head of the culinary team. He was sharp-eyed, gray-haired, and carried himself with authority. He gave her a firm handshake. "I've heard of your skills, Miss Hart. Welcome to the kitchen. We start early, we finish late, and we don't tolerate slackers." Amelia nodded. "Understood." The rest of the staff greeted her with genuine curiosity and respect. She didn't expect that. Her reputation as the mysterious chef from the competition clearly followed her. After outlining the duties, Mr. Hale leaned in slightly, his tone lowered. "One last thing," he said, eyes locking onto hers. "The chairman has one standing rule. No staff is to be in the house after nightfall. When Alpha Landon returns, he prefers solitude." She blinked, caught off guard. "All right." But Elias appeared again and handed her an ornate keyring. "You, however," he said with a rare gravity, "have been given clearance. You're the personal chef, Miss Hart. That means early access and late responsibility. He doesn't like noise, doesn't like being disturbed, but he trusts you to be in his home. That's an honor none of us have had in years." Her fingers closed slowly around the keys. "He trusts me." Her heart thudded with questions she couldn't voice. As the estate shifted into nighttime silence, the rest of the staff departed with a quiet efficiency. Amelia returned to the annex mind, still reeling. Finn was tucked under a soft comforter, already dozing off with his telescope set to face the moon. Amelia sat at the window, her oversized pink sweater wrapped around her like a blanket. Her pajama pants brushed the floor as she swung her feet gently. The night air was crisp. The stars sparkled. She pressed her hand to her chest. "Why is he doing this for me?" She didn't have an answer, so she bowed her head and whispered to the moon goddess, "Thank you for everything." Then, tying her hair into a bun with her favorite pink ribbon, she stood and turned toward the small kitchen. She had an idea. If she was truly Landon Voss's personal chef, then perhaps it was time to cook for him. Not just because it was her job, but because it was her language, her way of expressing emotion, curiosity, maybe even gratitude. And deep down, maybe a piece of her wanted to know what kind of man the alpha truly was. She rolled up her sleeves. It was time to step into her purpose. The Mansion of Secrets was her new home, and she was no longer afraid. But what secrets does this mansion hold, and how will they change her life forever? We'll find out. Chapter 11. The Midnight Encounter. The soft hum of the night wrapped around Shadowcrest Mansion like a velvet cloak. Shadows lay thick across the marble floors and climbed the grand staircases in waves of silver and black cast by the moonlight, spilling through towering windows. It was a house built for secrets, and tonight it whispered more than ever. Alpha Landon Voss arrived home later than usual, his sleek car purring to a stop in the private garage like a beast tamed only by his hand. As he stepped through the mansion's private entrance, a subtle shift in the air made him pause. His steps, usually deliberate and silent, slowed. His senses sharpened. Something was different. Then it hit him. Vanilla, sweet, warm, intoxicating. Her scent, Amelia. His wolf stirred immediately, growling low in his chest. That scent wasn't just familiar. It was a lure, a trigger, an invitation to let go of all restraint. He exhaled slowly, jaw-tight muscles coiled beneath the black button-down he'd rolled up to his elbows. She was here in his home, in the place he never allowed anyone to linger past dusk. Why did that both infuriate and calm him? He headed toward his private quarters, his mind clouded with her presence. He stripped off his shirt and slacks, stepping into the bathroom, turning the water to near scalding. Steam filled the marble chamber, curling over his skin like a second breath. Droplets slid along his tattooed arms, the ink running down his biceps and across his shoulders, symbols of an ancient lineage. His raven black hair stuck wetly to his neck and forehead as he gripped the sink's edge and stared into the mirror. Blue eyes glowed faintly in the reflection, the color deepened by the rising moon. Still not calm, still thinking of her wrapped in a towel around his hips, he stepped out of the bathroom water, still clinging to his frame, and began walking toward his room. Then clatter faint but unmistakable. From the kitchen he stilled. No one was allowed in the mansion after nightfall. No one except one, Amelia. His expression darkened his curiosity, and something far more primal took over. He padded silently through the halls, his presence a shadow among shadows. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. The moment he reached the kitchen, he stopped. There she was, standing beneath soft golden light, her back to him. Her raven dark hair was swept up into a cute, messy bun secured by a pink ribbon that made his wolf twitch with amusement and hunger. She wore an oversized pink sweater that slipped down one shoulder and matching pajama pants that bunched slightly at her ankles. Landon's breath hitched. She looked small, cozy, soft, innocent. His wolf growled again. Mine. Landon clenched his fists to contain it. He had no right to want her, no space in his life for such warmth. And yet every movement she made graceful, unknowing, captivated him. She was preparing something. Chocolate, strawberries, vanilla glaze. The smells filled the air like magic. Something stirred inside him. No one had ever done that. Not for him. Not in this house. Not since. He cut the thought off before it could bloom. Then he cleared his throat. Amelia jumped her hands, clutching the edge of the marble counter. She turned, and her eyes went wide. Her gaze met his bare chest, first droplets still glistening over carved muscles. Then it lowered, then darted quickly away. Her cheeks flushed. Her voice trembled. I'm sorry, she stammered. I was just making a late-night snack for you. I thought maybe you'd be hungry after work. Landon's expression didn't change, but something flashed in his eyes. He walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate, each movement echoing power. He stopped inches from her, and the air between them changed. Charged, electric, alive. He looked down at her, his voice low and unreadable. You weren't asked to. She blinked up at him, lips parted slightly. She couldn't look away. His scent clean soap and something darker swirled around her like a drug. His eyes locked on hers, oceanic and stormy. She felt her heartbeat thunder in her chest. The tension between them crackled fierce and raw. They stood like that for what felt like minutes, neither speaking, neither moving, just breathing, existing. Then finally, his voice broke the spell. You may go to bed, Amelia. Soft, final. He stepped back before she could respond. his expression unreadable once more. Then he disappeared down the corridor, his shadow trailing behind him like a whispered threat or a promise. Amelia stood frozen, breathless, heart pounding. Her knees felt weak. Her thoughts were scrambled. What was that? She turned back to the counter, finishing the plate of chocolate-drizzled strawberries with a trembling hand. She arranged them carefully, added a warm vanilla glaze, and placed it at the center of the counter. Would he eat it? She didn't know, but she cleaned up, washed her hands, and returned to the annex without another word. That night, as the moon rose high and painted the sky in silver fire, Landon returned to the kitchen. The plate was there, untouched, lovingly prepared. He stared at it for a long time. Then, without a word, he picked up one strawberry, sank his teeth into it. Warm, sweet, rich, dangerous. His eyes closed for half a second. Then he whispered almost to himself, "She's dangerous." And even as he said it, his hand was already reaching for another. Imagine in your daily interactions how a small act like preparing a snack can spark unexpected connections. So try showing care in little ways. It might open doors you never expected. Chapter 12. 1 minute late. The soft chirping of morning birds drifted through the slightly cracked window of the annex, their songs threading through the crisp morning air like ribbons of sound. The first golden beams of sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor, climbing the pale walls and gently brushing across Amelia's face. She stirred beneath the cotton sheets, her lashes fluttering before her eyes finally opened. For a moment she lay still, adjusting to the surreal calm of the new morning. She was in Shadowcrest Mansion, and today marked her first full day as the personal chef to the most elusive and powerful alpha in all of Lunar Haven Alpha, Landon Voss. The memory hit her with a strange mix of anxiety and determination. She rose quickly, the quiet urgency of responsibility anchoring her movements. After a quick shower, she dressed in the crisp black and white uniform left out for her the previous night. A sleek, high-collared black maid dress cinched at the waist, its modest hem just above her knees, and a white apron tied with symmetrical bows. She pulled her raven-black hair into a neat ponytail, letting a few wisps frame her face, and applied a soft gloss to her lips, enough to look presentable, not flashy. She tiptoed to the adjacent room where Finn was already stirring beneath his blankets, nestled among a sea of toys. He looked up at her with a sleepy smile, and her heart melted. She made him a hearty breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast with jam, and oatmeal sweetened with honey. After giving him his morning medication and kissing his forehead, she whispered softly, more to herself than him, "You're going to be okay." Then she was off, the edges of her apron fluttering behind her like wings as she rushed toward the main house. The grandeur of the mansion swallowed her as she entered the expansive kitchen. Marble countertops gleamed under the pendant lights, and the staff bustled in quiet unison. But the moment Amelia stepped inside, the head butler missed her. Hale glanced at the wall clock and then at her, raising one thick brow over his spectacles. "You're 1 minute late, Miss Amelia," he said coolly. Her heart stumbled. I'm sorry, I was taken care of." "No excuses," he interrupted, though there was no venom in his tone, only expectation. "Alpha Landon expects perfection. Be early next time." She nodded swiftly, swallowing the lump rising in her throat, and moved to join the breakfast preparations. Her hands moved on autopilot, cracking eggs, slicing fruit, browning toast. But her thoughts were elsewhere. She could feel him. Landon had risen early that morning. He lingered in his quarters longer than usual, pacing slowly, breathing in the scent that lingered in the air. Vanilla, her scent, his wolf, stirred uneasily, pacing within him. He clenched his jaw as he tried to ignore it. Ignore her. "Get it together, Landon. She's just an employee, not your mate. Not anymore." But the wolf was relentless. "She's ours. Remember the moonlight, the run, the stars." He stood at his bedroom window looking out toward the garden. There she was, her figure elegant yet grounded as she picked Herb's fingers, careful not to bruise the leaves. She didn't know he was watching. Didn't know how easily she was pulling him apart just by existing. Breakfast time came. Landon dressed casually, black t-shirt, tailored sweatpants, and made his way to the dining hall. Butler Elias greeted him with his tray, a balanced breakfast of eggs, toast bacon, and fresh berries. The alpha took a bite, chewing slowly. The flavor was exquisite. Perfect. Still, his lips twitched in amusement. "Elias," he said, voice low and casual, "this isn't quite right. Ask Amelia to make me another breakfast." Elias didn't flinch. He simply inclined his head and left the room. In the kitchen, Amelia looked up in surprise as Elias relayed the request. She smiled politely, though confusion flickered behind her eyes. "Of course," she said, and set about preparing another plate. The whispers began almost immediately. The staff traded glances. Some smirked knowingly, others watched her with a hint of pity. By the time she sent out the second plate, her palms were sweating. Then Elias returned. "Another," he said, his tone apologetic but firm. Her jaw tensed slightly, but she nodded. She prepared a new version, adjusting seasoning, refining the plating, making sure every detail was flawless. Landon took one bite, then another. Still not right. The cycle repeated 3, 4, 5 times. With each return of the tray, Amelia worked harder, digging deep into her reserves of patience and culinary artistry. The kitchen turned into a quiet storm of her effort, measured, precise, graceful. Each plate she sent out carried more of her heart. By the 5th attempt, she was exhausted. Her fingers trembled as she placed the last sprig of parsley. Her shoulders ached, but her pride stayed upright. Elias left with the final tray. Moments later, the front door clicked shut. Landon had left for Shadowcrest Tower. Amelia exhaled, allowing herself to lean briefly against the counter. The staff began murmuring, some amused, others impressed. She had survived. What she didn't know was that Landon had been watching. From a distance hidden in the upper hall, he'd watched each dish leave the kitchen. Watched her push herself further with quiet tenacity and resolve. He admired it, adored it even, and he wasn't done testing her. That evening, the mansion was blanketed in quiet. The staff had retired. The halls stood still. But Landon had one more challenge in mind. He entered the kitchen where Amelia was preparing a light meal for herself. Her hair had loosened from its tie, falling around her shoulders, and she looked tired but still composed. "Amelia," he said, his tone soft yet commanding. "I need something special tonight." She turned to face him, startled. "What would you like, Alpha Landon?" He stepped forward, his gaze sharp. "A 5-course meal from scratch. No shortcuts. I expect it to be extraordinary." She froze for just a heartbeat. She had been working non-stop. This was unexpected, demanding, but she met his eyes and nodded. "Yes, Alpha." He watched her for a moment longer, then disappeared into his study. Alone again, she faced the kitchen. She pulled back her sleeves and got to work. It was late. Her muscles ached, but she didn't falter. Each dish became a masterpiece: velvety soups, delicately roasted vegetables, tender meat, intricate desserts. She poured everything into the meal, not for his praise, but for herself, to prove she could do it. When the 5-course dinner was ready, she carried the trays to the study herself. Landon looked up from a leather-bound book, his expression unreadable, but his eyes followed her with sharp focus. She placed each dish in front of him. He ate slowly, thoughtfully, tension coiled in her chest. Finally, he set down his fork. "It's acceptable," he said, voice cool but not unkind. "But I expect nothing less than perfection next time." Amelia exhaled slowly. It wasn't praise, but it wasn't rejection. She had passed for now. "Thank you, Alpha Landon," she said, quietly bowing her head. He gave her a long look. There was something in his eyes, something unspoken, veiled. "You may go. Have a good night," he murmured, a faint grin touching his lips. She nodded and slipped away. Back in the kitchen, she began to clean up. Alone again, surrounded by warmth and silence, her thoughts wandered. This was only the beginning. Landon Voss was testing her limits, and she would rise to meet every single one. And if you're facing tests in your job or relationships, remember, enduring them with grace can build unbreakable strength. So ask yourself, what challenge can you face head-on today? Chapter 13. End of the game. Landon's behavior toward Amelia evolved into a complex, meticulous game. One he played with a predator's patience and the quiet control of an alpha accustomed to commanding every situation. His every glance, every word, every fleeting smirk seemed intentional. It was as if he were orchestrating a symphony, only he could hear a melody Amelia had been unconsciously dancing to. At first, it had all seemed innocent enough. Amelia had settled into life at Shadowcrest Mansion with the diligence and grace of someone determined to prove her worth. She mastered her role in the kitchen swiftly, efficiently. Her meals never failed to impress. Her dedication never wavered, but Landon began to change the tempo. Without warning, he started adding complexities to her tasks. Minor at first, then escalating. Each challenge felt like a puzzle, an unspoken riddle that tested not just her skill but her composure. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the kitchen, Amelia was busy preparing lunch. The smell of roasted garlic and thyme filled the air. She wiped her hands on her apron, humming softly to herself when the sound of deliberate footsteps interrupted her rhythm. She didn't have to turn. She knew it was Landon. His presence filled the space like a shift in gravity. Towering, composed, his every movement screamed control and unshakable dominance. The staff paused, surprised. He rarely ever entered the kitchen himself. Yet here he was, leaning casually against the doorframe, eyes locked on Amelia. "Good afternoon, Amelia," Landon said, his voice like silk woven over iron. There was a subtle gleam in his eye, something elusive, playful almost. "Afternoon, Alpha Landon," she replied, bowing her head slightly, careful to keep her tone respectful even as her instincts warned her that something was off. "How are we doing today?" he asked, words light on the surface but the weight behind them unmistakable. "I'm managing," she answered with a polite smile, though her mind scrambled to anticipate his purpose. Landon stepped forward, his broad frame blocking part of the light. "I need my lunch delivered to my study today personally. Would you mind?" The phrasing made it sound like a choice, but Amelia knew better. She blinked, processing the unexpected request. He had never asked this before. Others had always performed the task, but the way he looked at her now made it clear this was another move in his game. "Of course," she answered calmly, her back straightening. She carefully prepared the tray, checking and double-checking every element before lifting it and making her way through the long, silent hallways. The door to Landon's study stood open slightly. She knocked, heart fluttering just enough to be annoying. He didn't answer. She entered slowly. Landon was standing by the tall windows, arms crossed, gaze fixed outside. The sun cast a glow over his chiseled features, but he turned as soon as she stepped inside. His eyes found hers immediately, and something subtle shifted between them. She set the tray on the desk. "Here you go, Alpha Landon." His voice was smooth, almost affectionate. "Thank you, Amelia." She nodded, about to leave, but something in the moment rooted her to the spot. Over the following days, the challenges intensified. Landon sent meals back frequently, sometimes without reason, sometimes claiming it was too bland, too salty, too cold, too rich. Each critique came with a look piercing, unreadable. The staff murmured, watching her with curious eyes. Some sympathized, others whispered behind cupped hands. But Amelia kept going. One morning, after her third rejected breakfast in a row, she stood frozen in the kitchen, trembling with frustration. Her hands shook, her mind raced. She had done everything right, followed every instruction, crafted each dish with precision and care. She could feel her control slipping. Enough. She marched out of the kitchen, her footsteps echoing through the mansion's marble halls. She found herself outside Landon's office door, before her courage had time to falter. She knocked, then entered without waiting. Landon was seated at his desk, calm as ever. His eyes rose to meet hers, unreadable. "Alpha Landon," she said, voice firm though her heart pounded. "We need to talk," he arched an eyebrow. "Is something wrong with breakfast again?" Her fists clenched at her sides. "You've been testing me, Landon, every day with the food, and I need to know why." Landon leaned back slowly in his chair, his posture relaxed but his gaze sharp. "Testing you. I thought I was giving you tasks you could handle. You're talented, Amelia. I wanted to see the best from you." "Don't insult me," she snapped. "You've sent back my meals 5-6 times a day. You make me start over, again and again. You've been pushing me to the edge. And for what?" He was quiet for a moment, studying her. Then he sighed, his expression softening for the first time. "I didn't realize," he said slowly. "I didn't realize it was hurting you like that." Amelia stood still, surprised by the honesty in his voice. "I guess I was testing something else too," he continued, quieter now. "Testing me. I've spent so long in control, Amelia. Of everything. Of everyone. I didn't know how to let someone in without trying to break them first. But I see now that I've been unfair." She stepped closer to his desk, her voice gentler now. "You don't have to test me to see what I'm made of. I've shown you every day. You don't need to keep pushing me until I break." Landon's gaze locked with hers, something shifting beneath the surface. For once, he looked unguarded. "You're right," he said. "And I'm sorry. Truly, I won't do it again." There was a moment of silence, a fragile truce settling between them. Then, Landon stood slowly approaching her. The tension that had always simmered between them didn't vanish, but it changed. It matured. He stopped, just a breath away. "I'm sincere. Thank you," he said, "for being honest." "I needed that." Amelia nodded. She felt the weight lift from her chest, the exhaustion giving way to something lighter. "Just don't forget, I'm a person too, not just someone to control." A small, rare smile tugged at his lips. "Understood. I'll go easy on you." And for the first time, Amelia believed him. From that day forward, things began to shift. The endless testing ceased. The subtle power plays faded. Instead, Landon treated her with something new respect and maybe something deeper. Amelia no longer felt like a pawn in a game she couldn't win. She felt seen, valued, and in that quiet recognition she found a strange peace. Landon had stopped playing games, and Amelia could finally breathe. But most importantly, she could finally hope. The biggest mistake people make in relationships is testing boundaries too far it can break trust. So instead, communicate openly like Amelia did here, and watch how it strengthens your bonds. Chapter 14. A New Day. Amelia awoke before dawn, the first golden light seeping through the curtains of her modest room in the Shadowcrest estate. The air was brisk, tinged with the scent of dew-kissed roses from the mansion's sprawling gardens. She brushed the sleep from her eyes, tied her hair back, and slipped into her uniform, smoothing the apron over her waist. Today felt different, charged with a quiet energy like the world itself was holding its breath. She arrived at the mansion's grand kitchen where the staff greeted her with respectful nods. Everything was in motion. Polished surfaces gleamed copper pans hung like medals of honor, and the smell of baking bread filled the air. Her orders were simple: prepare breakfast for Alpha Landon. The kitchen staff stood by, expecting her to continue the morning's routine. They assumed Landon would, as usual, reject the first attempt and demand another, as he often did. But Amelia, focused and calm, poured her energy into crafting a single, perfect meal. Poached eggs over toasted brioche with herbs, fresh orange slices, and a steaming cup of dark roast coffee. Butler Elias entered moments later, collected the tray, and disappeared down the hall. Minutes passed, then more. Yet Elias didn't return with an order to redo the breakfast. The staff exchanged curious glances. Unbeknownst to Amelia, Landon had risen that morning, feeling unsettled. He stood before his mirror, adjusting the silver dark lapels of his suit sharp as a blade. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless and alert. It was Amelia's scent. It had bloomed across the mansion the moment she stepped inside. It clung to the air like wild jasmine, wrapping itself around his senses. He gritted his teeth. She was becoming impossible to ignore. Tugging on his cufflinks, he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out of his room, determined to escape before he saw her again. He couldn't afford to falter now. He had meetings, responsibilities, a kingdom of influence to maintain. And yet as Landon descended the grand staircase, the echo of small footsteps caught his ear. "Mr. Alpha," a bright voice called out. Finn came barreling down the hallway, holding a comic book above his head like a trophy. His little shoes squeaked on the polished floor. Landon froze. Her scent hit him first. Amelia's rich, delicate, maddening. Finn reached him, beaming. "Wait, I want to show you something." Amelia came jogging around the corner, breathless, her hair falling over her shoulders. "Finn, you can't just butt." Landon turned slowly, locking eyes with the boy. Finn held the comic up proudly. "This is my favorite comic. And guess what? The hero looks just like you." "See?" Landon blinked, caught off guard. He knelt, careful, deliberate, and took the comic book in his large hands. His gaze scanned the vibrant artwork. The hero, tall and dark-eyed, powerful and fierce. "You think I look like a hero?" he asked, his voice unusually soft. Finn nodded enthusiastically. "Yep, just cooler and richer." A rare sound escaped Landon, then a chuckle low and genuine. He handed the comic back. "You've got good taste, kid." Amelia reached them, panting slightly, her cheeks flushed. "I'm so sorry, Alpha Landon." I told him not to interrupt. But Landon stood towering above them once more. His gaze met hers, and for a moment it burned. Time stilled. The mansion faded around them. All he saw was her. Then, with the air of a man gripping his last thread of control, Landon turned sharply and walked toward the front doors. "Make sure your brother eats all his breakfast," he called out without looking back. Amelia's lips parted in surprise. Yes, Alpha Landon, she said softly. As the doors closed behind him, she placed a hand over her racing heart. He didn't scold them. He didn't growl or command. He laughed. He listened. He saw her. And just for that fleeting second, she wondered what it would be like if he was the hero of her story. In family life, moments like this show that blending new people into your circle can bring unexpected joy. So, if you're building a blended family, start with small interactions like sharing a comic. It can create lasting bonds. Chapter 15. The distance between us. Amelia had always believed that professionalism was her strength. In the bustling kitchens of Lux Haven, she had endured arrogant chefs, unruly customers, and the chaos of perfection. Her work was her armor, neat, focused, unshakable, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for working under Alpha Landon Voss. He was a force, a presence so commanding that even in his silence he took up all the space in the room. And yet she rarely saw him. That was the rule. The Shadowcrest estate had a rhythm as old as the family line itself. Staff arrived before dawn and left before dusk. The Alpha's routine was separate, untouched by their presence. Amelia was assigned to manage the kitchen, prepare his meals, maintain the order, and stay out of sight. And she had, at least at first, but something had begun to shift. Started with the smallest things. The sensation of being watched when she walked past the hallway near his study. The faint trace of amber and pine, Landon's scent clinging to the annex door even though she hadn't seen him all day. Once, after a long day of prep, she returned to the kitchen to find a small basket waiting at her station. No note, no explanation, just pink satin hair ribbons. Her ribbons, the exact color she always wore to tie her hair into a bun. She stared at the basket for nearly a full minute, her heart thumping. Coincidence, she told herself. One of the staff must have noticed her worn-out ribbon and tried to be kind. Still, she chose the prettiest one that day, and wore it with a blush on her cheeks. Above her, in the upper wings of the estate, Landon Voss stood behind his desk, fighting the war inside his chest. He was a creature of control, routine power. But ever since Amelia had entered his home, nothing had felt safe. Her presence was a wildfire burning through his thoughts. He heard her laughter in the gardens. He smelled her vanilla sugar scent in the halls. And worse, his wolf was no longer content to watch from the shadows. He couldn't touch her. Couldn't tell her. Not yet. She's your employee, he reminded himself. But she's also our mate, his wolf snarled. Landon paced his study like a caged beast. Every time he tried to focus on work, her image danced behind his eyes. So, though he left small tokens, anonymous but precise ribbons, a jar of imported cinnamon, a cookbook written by one of her favorite chefs, no words, only actions, and still she affected him. That afternoon, Amelia was out in the garden with Finn. The boy had grown stronger, healthier. He chattered while helping her water the roses, promising to become a chef one day and build a kitchen just for her. She smiled, reached for a sprig of rosemary, and froze. That gaze, she felt it hot, heavy, and hidden. Her eyes rose to the second-floor balcony overlooking the garden empty, but her heart told her otherwise. That evening she returned to the kitchen and something on the marble island caught her attention. A white velvet box, a single folded note beside it. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. "Use this for your evening dessert. Let's see how sweet you can be. LV." She opened the box slowly and gasped. Madagascar vanilla whole pods, fresh and fragrant. Their scent so rich it made her dizzy. It was rare, expensive, precious. She stared down at them, her cheeks blooming with heat. She should have been offended. Instead, her fingers gently brushed the soft ridges of the pods. He had noticed he'd seen her stash run out just yesterday, which meant he had been watching. The kitchen became a sanctuary of aromas as she worked. Cream simmered gently, vanilla steeped slowly, and the scent of sugar curled around her like a warm embrace. She focused on every stir, every whisk, her nerves humming. Just as she began plating the soufflés, the air shifted. Footsteps. Quiet, intentional. She turned and her heart lurched. Landon. Not the alpha in suits and silence, but Landon, the man dressed in a black shirt collar, open sleeves rolled up. His hair was tousled, his expression unreadable. They stared at each other. The tension between them was a live wire. His gaze flicked to the soufflés, then back to her. A smirk ghosted across his lips. "You really are sweet," he murmured, her breath caught. I used the vanilla," she said, barely above a whisper. Thank you. He stepped closer just enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off his skin, but he didn't touch her. He picked up a spoon, tasted the soufflé, and let the silence stretch. Then he turned to leave. Perfect, he said, his voice low, and disappeared into the shadows beyond the kitchen door. Amelia stood frozen, her hands gripping the counter, her chest rising with every unsteady breath. There was still distance between them, but for the first time, she felt him reaching across it. And maybe, just maybe, that space between them wouldn't last forever. In your own relationships, if small gestures like gifts bridge gaps, try incorporating them more often, it can turn distance into closeness, one step at a time. Chapter 16. Workday. It was a bright and crisp morning when Alpha Landon Voss made an unusual suggestion. The sky over Shadowcrest Estate was the color of polished steel, the air rich with the scent of dew-covered earth and ancient pine trees. Inside the mansion, the staff were moving about in quiet efficiency when Butler Elias received the order that set the day in motion. Have Amelia sent to the dining room, Landon had instructed with uncharacteristic softness in his voice. Amelia arrived moments later, slightly out of breath, brushing flour from her apron, wondering if Landon required a special breakfast or perhaps more coffee. Instead, the Alpha looked up from his place at the head of the table and said calmly, "Get Finn ready. He's coming with me to Shadowcrest Tower today." Amelia blinked. To the tower, Alpha. He met her gaze, those steel blue eyes steady. "Yes, I want him to see what it's like." Though confusion stirred inside her, Amelia nodded. Deep down, she trusted Landon. He would protect Finn. Of that, she was certain. She made her way to the annex and found Finn sprawled across the couch, completely engrossed in a movie. "Hey, buddy," she called gently. "Time to get up. Landon wants to take you to Shadowcrest Tower." Finn's head snapped up, eyes wide. "Me, really?" "Yes. Come on, let's get you ready." She dressed him in the formal navy suit she'd been saving for special occasions. His dark hair was combed neatly, his shoes polished to a shine. When she led him back into the foyer, Landon was already waiting, dressed immaculately as ever in his silver charcoal suit. Finn greeted him with a confident morning, "Alpha, Landon." Landon's eyes softened. "You look sharp. Let's go." Amelia stood silently at the top of the staircase, watching them walk side by side down the long hallway, their footsteps echoing off marble floors. She had a good feeling about Landon Voss that morning. A very good feeling. Finn, now 13, was thrilled beyond words. The luxury car purred beneath them as they glided into Lunar Haven, and as the sleek silhouette of Shadowcrest Tower emerged on the horizon, its mirrored glass catching the early sun. Finn could hardly contain his excitement. Inside, the reaction was instantaneous. Staff paused mid-step. Eyes followed the Alpha and the boy, their resemblance unmistakable. The same raven dark hair, the same sharp cheekbones and intense blue eyes. Landon didn't explain. He didn't need to. He led Finn through the towering lobby marble floors gleaming beneath their feet and rested a hand on the boy's shoulder in a gesture that felt both casual and deeply protective. The elevator chimed open, and in seconds they were ascending to the topmost floor. The doors opened to reveal Landon's private domain, a sprawling glass-walled office with breathtaking views of Lunar Haven. Finn stepped forward in awe. "Like it?" Landon asked, the ghost of a smile on his face. Finn grinned. "It's awesome." Throughout the day, Finn shadowed Landon. He observed high-stakes meetings, negotiations that shaped not just corporations but entire packs. And yet between each moment of power, Landon would pause to explain things to Finn. He broke down corporate jargon into simple words, leaned close to sketch quick diagrams, and invited questions. When lunch came, Landon surprised everyone by ordering burgers and fries, Finn's favorite, and had them delivered to his office. They ate on the sleek leather couch, watching a funny movie Finn had brought on his tablet, their laughter echoing off the tall windows. At one point, Finn wandered to Landon's desk and stopped in front of a framed photograph. It was old and faded. Landon's parents, a young boy clutched in his mother's arms, a family lost to time. "Do you miss them?" Finn asked, voice quiet. Landon turned to look at the photo. A long silence passed. "Every day," he said simply. Finn looked down. "I miss mine too. I still remember the fire. Amelia saved me." Landon looked at the boy for a long, quiet moment. "She's your guardian angel," he said. Finn smiled faintly and went back to his seat. By mid-afternoon, the boy had curled up on the plush couch, exhaustion catching up with him. He dozed off one hand, still clutching a half-eaten fry. Landon, quiet as a whisper, removed his jacket and laid it gently over the boy's shoulders. Then he stood over him for a long moment, something warm and unfamiliar blooming in his chest. It wasn't just admiration. It wasn't even duty. It was love. Unspoken and new, but unmistakable. Landon had seen orphans rise. He'd seen soldiers fall. He'd ruled over lands and bloodlines. But never had he looked at someone so young, so vulnerable, and felt this undeniable need to protect. Finn wasn't just Amelia's brother anymore. He was his. That day, Shadowcrest Tower wasn't just a symbol of power. It became a place where something far more important was forged. Not contracts, not alliances, but a bond. A bond between an alpha and a boy. Sealed not by blood, but by love, trust, and an unspoken promise. I will protect you always. And if you're mentoring someone young in your life, this illustrates how simple acts like sharing a workday can build profound connections, so try inviting them into your world today. Chapter 17. Shadows from the Past. The sun had dipped behind the hills of Lunar Haven, casting golden rays that spilled through the tall windows of Shadowcrest Mansion. The vast estate, always quiet, had grown almost reverent in the absence of its alpha. The usual bustle of staff had long faded into silence, and the air held the faint scent of lavender polish and the last traces of an early spring breeze, drifting through the open windows. Amelia was alone. She remained behind that evening, not out of duty, but by choice. With the full Moon Banquet approaching, she had committed herself to finalizing the events menu. A dazzling array of courses meant to please royalty and warriors alike. But beyond the elaborate planning, she wanted to prepare something special for Landon and Finn, something warm and comforting. The mansion's kitchen glowed golden from the soft light of pendant fixtures. Amelia moved in rhythm, the soft tap of her knife against the cutting board, a steady heartbeat in the stillness. Scented steam curled up from the stovetop. The stillness brought her peace, purpose, until the doorbell rang. She froze the motion so unexpected that it jarred her entire body. Shadowcrest Mansion had its protocols. Alpha Landon never rang the bell. The house had a high-tech security system locked by voice recognition and encrypted passwords. Visitors were screened. No one arrived without permission, especially not while Landon was away. Wiping her hands on her apron, Amelia walked toward the grand entrance. Her footsteps echoed over polished floors, her heart ticking a little faster with each step. She hesitated before opening the heavy mahogany door. Then she saw him. Damon Thorne Beta of the prestigious Nightshade clan. Once a man who stirred excitement in her heart, now a ghost from a past she had buried. His chestnut hair was styled with that same lazy confidence. His eyes, green and sharp like broken glass, scanned her face and form with unsettling familiarity. Damon, she said the name, tasting sour on her tongue. Her hand instinctively gripped the edge of the door. Amelia, he replied, voice smooth and cold like chilled wine. I heard you were staying here working for him. His gaze dropped from her face, lingering on the apron tied around her waist, the flower smudges on her cheeks. His smirk was slow, twisted. I almost didn't believe it. You've changed, he said, the words curling with suggestion and judgment. I wasn't expecting visitors, she said evenly, though her heart pounded in warning. Landon isn't home. I know, Damon said, stepping past the threshold as if the house belonged to him. That's why I came. The air turned colder. Amelia backed up instinctively. His scent familiar cologne and arrogance clawing at memories she wanted to forget. I came to apologize, Damon said, brushing a strand of her hair aside with a touch that made her skin crawl. She flinched away, and his smile only widened. I was wrong to reject you. Back then you were just a no-name wolf. I didn't see what you were, but now everyone's talking about you, the chef who lives in Shadowcrest Estate, Alpha Landon's favorite. She blinked. You want me now because I work here. He shrugged like it was reasonable. You've proven yourself. That's rare for an orphan. With your looks, your talent, your connections, you're valuable now. I could make you mine properly. Amelia's gut twisted. Damon's words slithered into her mind like poison. The thought of belonging to him, of being used as a prize or possession, made her want to scream. Get out, she snapped. He stepped forward, undeterred. Don't pretend you don't remember how we take your hands off her. The voice cut through the room like lightning splitting a tree. Damon spun around. Landon stood in the doorway, Finn just behind him. No coat, tie loosened sleeves rolled up. Alpha Landon Voss returned early, radiated pure burning fury. His golden eyes locked onto Damon with predator intensity. Alpha Landon Damon stammered. "I didn't know you were back. And Finn, look at you all grown up." Landon didn't move. His voice was ice. "I don't remember inviting you into my home. Did you come to insult my staff or trespass on what's mine?" Amelia inhaled sharply. "Mine." Damon's face paled. "I didn't mean I don't care what you meant." Landon took a step forward. "Touch her again, and I'll rip your arm from its socket." Slowly, the threat wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. Damon flinched under the weight of Landon's power. He swallowed, muttered a half apology, then cast one last glance at Amelia, a look twisted with resentment and something darker before vanishing out the door. Silence reigned. Landon turned his chest, still rising and falling in slow, furious breaths. He looked at Amelia, taking in every detail, her clenched fists. The way her shoulders shook, the flash of fear still lingering in her eyes. "Did he hurt you?" His voice was low, tight. She shook her head. "No, but thank you for coming when you did." He stepped closer, so close she could feel his body heat. His eyes bore into hers deeper than ever before. "I don't like anyone touching what's mine." Her heart leapt. "I'm not yours," she whispered, uncertain. His voice dropped to a growl. "Not yet, but I will never let anyone hurt you again." Then, without another word, he walked past her into the mansion's shadowy corridor. Amelia stood frozen. Finn ran up to her, wrapping his arms tightly around her waist. She sank to her knees, hugging him back with trembling arms. His small presence grounded her, warmed her. Later, she brought him to the kitchen. She fed him the special dinner she had made, her hands steadying as he chattered about his day. The smell of roasted chicken and herbs filled the space like a balm. Not long after, Landon appeared in the doorway, no longer fury incarnate, but composed, quiet, watching. He joined them at the table, and together they ate. Amelia still moved about perfecting a dish for the upcoming banquet, but her eyes kept flicking to the two of them. Finn recounted his visit to the tower, his voice animated. Landon listened with a faint smile, nodding now and then. They talked easily like a family, and Amelia, in the quiet between stirring pots and slicing herbs, realized something that made her heart ache in a sweet, strange way. She wasn't alone anymore. She had them, and something had changed irreversibly, powerfully in the halls of Shadowcrest that night. A shadow had returned, but a light had risen in its place. Facing past shadows in your relationships can be painful, but confronting them, like Landon did here, often clears the way for brighter futures. So reflect on what old hurts you need to address today. Chapter 18. The Tragedy. That evening, as the last vestiges of twilight faded into night over the proud hills of Lunar Haven, Amelia found herself deep within the bustling kitchens of the Shadowcrest estate. The scent of roasted meats, caramelized onions, and herb-infused sauces mingled in the air as she worked side by side with the staff, perfecting the lavish menu for the upcoming full moon banquet. But while her hands stayed busy chopping, stirring, seasoning, her mind was elsewhere. She kept replaying the look in Landon's eyes from the night before, the tension in his jaw when Damon's name had come up, the possessive edge in his voice when he stood between her and the past that had come knocking, the way he had looked at her as if she belonged to him. No, not out of ownership, but something far more intimate, something protective, something deep. She tried to brush it away as the emotional residue from her encounter with Damon. Maybe she was reading too much into Landon's reactions. Maybe she just wanted to believe there was something more between them. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The quiet ferocity, the way he had stepped forward, how his body had stood like a shield in front of hers. Her heart pulsed to the memory. Meanwhile, in the quiet comfort of the annex, Landon sat with Finn curled beside him, the boy tucked under layers of blankets, his eyes bright despite the chill in the air. They shared steaming mugs of hot cocoa, the clinking of ceramic cups, soft and comforting in the silence. Finn, small but wise beyond his years, turned toward Landon. His voice came gently. "My sister, she's everything to me." Landon looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly as the boy continued. "She raised me since I was 6 after the fire. When our parents died, she gave up everything just to keep me safe. When I got sick, she worked all the time. Sometimes she wouldn't eat for days just to buy my medicine. She never let me see how scared she was, but I knew. Landon's jaw tensed. He said nothing, but his silence was thick with meaning. Finn pressed on. When Damon rejected her, it shattered her. Not because she loved him that much, but because she thought someone finally saw her. But he didn't. He just saw a burden. Me. Landon set his cup down quietly. His voice, when it came, was low. That was his mistake. Finn nodded slowly. Someone helped us. Paid for my surgery. Amelia doesn't know who. But I do. I think it was our guardian angel. A ghost of a smile flickered at Landon's lips, but he didn't confirm it. Finn leaned forward, voice quieter now. She acts like she's fine, but she's tired. I know she is. She's scared, too. I just want someone to see her, really see her the way she sees me. Landon's eyes dropped to his Coco again, then to the boy beside him. His tone softened, almost reverent. She's stronger than most alphas I've known. She deserves everything. Finn tilted his head thoughtfully. You're not like people say, they say you're cold, dangerous, but you're different. Landon let out a quiet laugh. So, are you Finn? Just then, the annex door swung open. Amelia stepped inside, her cheeks flushed from the night air and the chaos of preparation at the city hall. Her eyes fell instantly on the two of them. Finn nestled beside Landon, Coco in hand, both of them framed by the soft firelight and the rich, dark wood of the annex. She paused. Something in her chest pulled taut. It wasn't just the sight of them. It was the feeling. Something in the way Landon looked up when he saw her. Not just with awareness, but with quiet understanding. Like he saw her, not just the way she moved or spoke, but the burdens she carried, the sacrifices she never spoke of. And in his gaze was not possession. It was recognition. He saw her, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she felt truly seen. She smiled, not one of forced politeness or tired gratitude, but something soft and real. She moved toward them, setting her bag down and walking into the warm circle they had unknowingly created together. Finn immediately perked up. Ami Landon made the best cocoa. You've got to try it. He even lets me stir it. Landon chuckled softly. He's my secret weapon in the kitchen now. Amelia laughed, her exhaustion melting away for a moment. She took the mug Finn offered and sat beside them, feeling warmth from more than just the drink in her hands. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. Outside, the moon began its slow rise, casting silver shadows over the haven. Inside, in that small, quiet annex, something invisible shifted gently, undeniably. Not a storm, not a fire, but a beginning. And in that stillness, wrapped in warmth and presence, the tragedy of their pasts didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. They were finding something new, a family, one moment at a time. If you're carrying unspoken burdens in your life, sharing them with trusted ones like Finn did can lighten the load, so consider opening up to someone today. It might heal more than you think. Chapter 19. Full Moon Banquet. The Full Moon Banquet was one of the grandest events in Lunar Haven. An elite gathering under the silver glow of the full moon, where power, legacy, and alliances shimmered as bright as the moonlight itself. It was where old rivalries found a stage, where new partnerships were whispered into existence over clinking crystal glasses, and where appearances were not just kept, they were glorified. But this year, everything changed. That afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the Shadowcrest estate, Amelia returned from the city hall, her hands still dusted with glitter from place settings and floral arrangements. Exhaustion clung to her limbs, but as she approached her annex, her steps faltered. There, waiting at her door, were boxes, large, luxurious, unmistakable. Dior Clive, Christian Bulgari Hermes, Christian Louboutin. Her heart raced. She opened the door quickly, dragging the packages inside with trembling fingers. As she peeled back the layers, her breath caught in her throat. Nestled within the tissue were a breathtaking blue Dior designer gown, a delicate and shimmering pair of silver Christian Louboutin heels, a Hermes Birkin 25 inches blue, and the glittering serpenti necklace, earrings, and bracelet from Bulgari, and the scent Clive Christian's signature perfume, luxurious, floral, dangerous. Everything was perfectly selected. Each piece harmonized with the next like the chorus of an old, elegant song. The shoes glistened, the jewelry sparkled, and the perfume made her feel like royalty. At the very top of it all, a folded note sat nestled in the dress's neckline. The handwriting was bold, assertive, familiar. "Wear this, I'll be waiting." LV Amelia clutched the note to her chest, her fingers trembling. When she was ready, Butler Elias greeted her with a gentle, knowing smile. "Miss Hart, I'll see to Finn tonight. You have nothing to worry about." She kissed Finn's head as he watched cartoons, oblivious to the storm of change swirling around them. By the time the chauffeur rolled the sleek Rolls-Royce boat tail to a stop before the annex, the moon was already high and bright. The polished midnight blue car shimmered like liquid starlight beneath the glowing sky. And then she stepped out. Landon Voss, ever composed, ever powerful, stood waiting. The moment he saw her, he stopped breathing. Amelia, dressed in the blue Dior gown, looked ethereal. Her raven dark hair had been pulled into a graceful updo, silver pins tucked like falling stars through the dark waves. Her skin glowed beneath the moonlight, her lips slightly parted as she looked at him. Landon wore a custom midnight blue Balenciaga suit that was tailored to perfection. His raven black hair was styled sleekly. His suit adorned with a Cartier blue rose diamond brooch. His feet were clad in sharp Christian Louboutin shoes. And around his wrist gleamed a rare Patek Philippe Henry Graves supercomplication. Everything about him was a declaration of control, elegance, and untouchable wealth. He offered her his arm without a word. She took it, her fingers curling gently around his bicep. He opened the car door for her, carefully collecting the ends of her gown so they wouldn't drag. As she slid inside, she noticed the way his eyes followed her with reverence. The ride to the banquet was silent, but the tension was palpable. The air between them electric, thick with anticipation and unspoken promises. When they arrived at the city hall, banquet time seemed to freeze. All heads turned. The grand marble entrance, bathed in moonlight, bore witness to the moment Alpha Landon Voss, the reclusive and powerful leader of Shadowcrest, had arrived with a woman. Not just any woman, Amelia Hart. She wore no crown, but she glowed. She sparkled more brilliantly than the diamonds worn by every Luna's daughter in the room. Her posture was poised, her expression calm but alert. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was the confidence, the way she moved beside Landon like she belonged there, that turned whispers into silence. Landon did not leave her side. His hand hovered protectively at the small of her back. His gaze swept the room, daring anyone to question her place. He whispered in her ear, and Amelia's cheeks flushed in a way no rouge could replicate. Then came the moment. Landon led her toward the Shadowcrest council table. Elder Voss, stern and sharp-eyed, stood with the other elders, clearly expecting another lecture about lineage. But Landon had other plans. He held Amelia's hand firm but gentle. "Elder Voss," Landon said, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "I want you to meet Amelia Hart." "My mate," the words landed like thunder. Amelia felt her heart slam against her ribcage. The silence was brief, almost stunned, before Elder Voss nodded respectfully, though the surprise didn't vanish from his eyes. "She is poised," he said carefully. One of the older council members leaned toward Landon and muttered loud enough for Amelia to hear. "She's as beautiful as they say," they chuckled. Amelia kept her expression calm, her smile gracious. Across the hall Beta, Damon Thorne nearly dropped his glass. His emerald eyes were wide, burning with disbelief and rising envy. He saw the woman he had once rejected standing beside the most powerful alpha in the city. Her gown alone cost more than his car. Her shoes could pay a month's rent for his apartment. And the way Landon held her hand, the way he looked at her as though she was treasure found and fate fulfilled, it tore something inside him. He had thrown her away. And now she belonged to a king. Later in the evening, after hours of formalities, introductions, and veiled, judgmental glances, Landon finally guided Amelia toward the exit. The full moon bathed the city hall steps in silver. He turned to her just before they reached the car. "You handled yourself like a queen tonight," he said, voice low and reverent. They saw what I already knew. Amelia's breath caught. Back in the Rolls-Royce, silence once again filled the space between them, but this time it felt safe, comfortable. Her hand brushed the edge of her purse, but her mind was miles away, playing back every moment of the night. When they reached the estate, the world was still. Finn was fast asleep, and Butler Elias gave a respectful nod before disappearing down the hall. Landon walked her to the annex, stopping at the threshold beneath the moonlight. "I know tonight may have been overwhelming," he said softly, "but I brought you because I wanted them to see you. I wanted them to know who you are to me." She looked at him, emotions flooding to the surface. Gratitude, confusion, longing, fear. "Why me?" she asked quietly. You could have anyone. Landon stepped forward. Because when I found you, I found peace. You don't have to understand it, just don't run from it. He didn't kiss her. He didn't reach out. He simply looked at her long and deep, memorizing every freckle under the moonlight. Every piece of her he dared not touch yet. Then he turned and walked away. And Amelia stood there, her hand pressed to her chest where her heart raced as if trying to fly. For the first time, she didn't doubt the path ahead. Maybe, just maybe, he was hers and she was his. If public events intimidate you like they did Amelia, practicing poise in small social settings can build confidence for bigger moments, so start today with one interaction. Chapter 20. My lovely Alpha. The morning sun filtered gently through the white curtains of the annex, casting a soft golden glow across the cozy room. Dust particles floated lazily in the warm shafts of light, painting a serene portrait of peace. Amelia stirred beneath the covers, the softness of the sheets, a contrast to the whirlwind of memories dancing in her mind. The events of the previous night, wrapped in glimmering moonlight and whispered declarations, washed over her like a tide. She remembered Landon standing tall before the Shadowcrest Council, her hand firmly in his, introducing her not as an acquaintance, not as a staff member, but as his mate. The echo of those words still rang in her chest, powerful and transformative. Beside her, Finn slept soundly. His small frame rose and fell in a steady rhythm, his cheeks flushed with the warm hue of improving health. Amelia leaned over, placing a soft kiss between his brows. She lingered for a moment, marveling at the innocence in his peaceful expression before quietly slipping out of bed. As she stepped into the main mansion, the routine familiarity of her duties wrapped around her like a comforting shawl. Dressed in her usual crisp uniform, she padded barefoot into the kitchen only to freeze in her tracks. There, sitting elegantly on the granite island, was a bouquet of deep, midnight blue roses, so rare and enchanting that they looked otherworldly. Nestled among their velvety petals was a small handwritten note. "You were extraordinary last night. LV." Her heart leapt in her chest, fluttering like a startled bird. She reached out, fingertips brushing the delicate ink before she gently folded the note and tucked it into her apron pocket, trying unsuccessfully to compose herself. "Mr." Hale, ever observant, passed behind her with a tray of steaming scones and offered a subtle smirk. The kitchen staff exchanged glances, some smiling knowingly. Amelia, cheeks flushed, tried to ignore the thrum in her chest, but the day continued to unveil more gentle surprises. Her favorite tea, one she hadn't tasted since arriving at the Shadowcrest estate, now sat neatly stocked in the pantry. A new apron fitted perfectly to her size and embroidered with her initials was hung beside the others. Her task list had been thoughtfully rearranged to accommodate shorter hours and lighter duties. Someone, and there was no doubt who had gone out of his way to protect and uplift her in small but meaningful ways. By midday, Landon had yet to appear inside the mansion, but Amelia caught a glimpse of him through the bay windows. He stood outside near the eastern lawn, tall and commanding in a sharply tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was kissed by the wind as he spoke to Elder Voss. Even from afar, the gravity in his presence was unmistakable, and when his eyes shifted, meeting hers through the glass, the connection was electric even in silence. Moments later, Finn appeared bundled in a soft gray jacket, his small hands clutching something. Amelia watched curious as her brother approached the two men. He extended a colorful hand-drawn card to Landon. The image was simple but earnest. Landon, Amelia, and Finn standing together beneath a glowing moon. Landon accepted the card as though it were a sacred artifact, crouching to Finn's level with rare tenderness. "I'm not good at this kind of stuff," he said, voice softer than Amelia had ever heard it. "But I'm glad you're feeling better." Finn's eyes sparkled. "You're like a big wolf knight. My sister always protects me, but now she has someone too. I think you make her happy even when she pretends you don't." Landon turned his gaze toward the garden where Amelia stood frozen, caught in the moment. "She makes me feel something I thought I was too broken to feel," he murmured. The weight of his words landed deep within Amelia's soul. It was Finn's voice that carried them to her, but it was Landon's heart that had spoken. The truth nestled inside her, warm and steady. Elder Voss looked on with quiet approval. He bid farewell to Finn and joined Landon in the sleek Ferrari parked at the gate. The engine hummed to life, and the two men departed for Shadowcrest Tower. As the sky darkened, and the day slipped into twilight, a storm gathered. By evening, rain lashed against the tall windows of the Shadowcrest mansion. Thunder rumbled across the distant hills, a haunting echo of memories long buried. The estate felt like a living thing, shivering beneath the weight of the storm. Amelia had just finished polishing the kitchen counters when a sharp crash split the air. She paused, every muscle tense, instincts flaring. She sprinted toward the sound, guided by her heart as much as her ears. The noise had come from Landon's quarters. The door stood ajar, swaying gently with the air pressure. Light spilled in from the hallway, casting a long shadow across the floor where Landon lay crumpled. His shirt was open, his chest heaving, skin slick with sweat and rain. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the nightstand, knuckles white. He didn't seem to see her at first, his eyes glazed over by a storm raging within. The past had returned to haunt him. She stepped inside, cautiously, voice barely above a whisper. Landon. His eyes found hers, haunted and vulnerable, red-rimmed and glassy. And then, without a word, he collapsed forward into her, burying his face into her chest as if seeking absolution. She dropped to her knees, arms wrapping around him, holding him close as his composure shattered. Thunder crashed again, but in her embrace he trembled less. Her fingers threaded through his hair, whispering quiet reassurances, grounding him with her warmth. Time blurred.